everybody, welcome back to another coding video. Today we're going to build our very own calculator, which is what I said we would be doing in Tuesday's video, which taught us all about functions. Today we're going to be using those functions and using Turtle to create a pretty cool calculator that can add, subtract, multiply, divide, and also draw random circles all over our screen. So that'll be pretty cool. It's going to be pretty straightforward. This will be more of a demonstration video than a tutorial, but there's still some new stuff that's going to be learned in here, such as inputting in data to then use in your code, you know, from a command line, us typing in stuff for the function, like actual program to do instead of us writing code. So it'll be a little bit of a tutorial as well, and hopefully by the end you will be able to make a pretty cool looking calculator. So let's hop right on in here. As usual, we have our code window up and running as we normally do, and let's just get started. So we know that we're going to need to import Turtle. This is always good to just do at the start of your code if you're going to be using Turtle during it, and we will be, so I'll just import it there. We're also going to need a couple functions. Let's define an add function in which we're going to pass in two variables. We'll call them x1 and x2. We're going to need a subtract function. I'm also going to call our parameters x1 and x2. We're going to have a multiply, which we'll put right there, not to be confused with multiply, completely different. And then finally a divide right here as so. And then we'll just have a function that is circle, and we will pass in whatever the number of circles, we'll call this num, the number of circles that we want to make in that thing. We'll pass in that number. So right now we have two parameters for add. These will be the two numbers we add together. Two numbers for subtract. We'll subtract the second from the first. Multiply x1 times x2, and then divide x1 divided by x2. And divide is a pretty special case, and we're going to cover a little bit of error checking with divide here later in the video. But let's also create a menu function, which we're just going to call to do the menu of our calculator. And then finally, we'll have our main function, which of course we will call here at the end to ensure that it's running everything. You should always have a main function in your code here. So main, we'll just call menu in, and then we'll just make sure that we call main at the end of our code, and that'll make sure it runs it. So what do we want to have in menu? We'll just kind of bump this down and start working on menu. Well, we want this to loop over and over and over again until we have the user say to stop. So we're just going to create a variable. It's going to be the choice that the user makes. And we're just going to assign this to 0 right now, as we won't be using 0 shortly. So this could be any number, really, that isn't a number that we'll be using. So we can do negative 124, whatever gazillion number that is, and that'll be fine. Let's actually put in the choices first, and then we'll see what we're going to loop with. So we're going to do a print statement. I'm just doing a little bit of designing right now. You can kind of do whatever you want for this. This is a calculator. There we go. It's a very, very complex little thing here. We'll just kind of add another line in like that. It's just going to print it out all pretty. And then we'll have our choices. So 1 is going to be to add. 2 is going to be to subtract. We'll have 3 be multiply. We'll have 4 be to divide. We'll have 5 be, we'll do for turtle. And then finally we'll have 6 be to quit. Okay? So then what we want to do is, while the choice is not 6, we want to continue to loop this. So we're just going to put in here, while choice is not equal to 6. And that will then loop this code until the person inputs in a 6. And we'll check to make sure this works at the end here, but I can promise you this is a very easy way to keep this menu up and running as we go here. So this is good. Print, this is the calculator, and then add, subtract, multiply, divide, and q. So how do we input in what choice we want? So we want to have the choice variable equal to input from the user. We want them to type in what choice they want. So it's very simple to do. We're just going to do input and then what would you like to do? And this is just a little sentence that is going to kind of tell them that, what would you like to do up here? This can be anything. We could say, you know, pick one, you loser, and type that in, and that'll be fine. It's just, we're going to get input from the keyboard and store it as choice here. So what would you like to do? Well, you know, obviously they'll put in a number, and then we have to process what that choice is. So let's say that if choice is equal to 1. Okay, and this is where you got to be a little bit cautious, and then there's a chance I just did this wrong. Obviously when we run it we will see. So if choice is equal to the string 1, when we have this in quotes, that means it's a string. When we input from the keyboard, I believe in Python it inputs as a string, but I'm not 100% sure. We might be able to just say if choice equals 1, and that would work. Or what we could do, let's actually do this. Let's just typecast whatever this input is as an integer. And that's pretty straightforward to do. You just put int in front of whatever your variable is. If we had another variable, say we had choice is equal to the string 1, and then we say choice is equal to the int of choice, then that's going to typecast this string to be the integer 1. We're doing the exact same thing here. Don't worry too much about that. It's important to know, and that's why we're going to do it here, or else we're going to have issues with things not recognizing the comparator here. So if choice is equal to 1, then we're going to be calling add. And I'm just putting this in as a comment right now because we'll get that to be fleshed out here shortly, because we got to also ask the user, what numbers do you want to add? So elif choice is equal to 2, then we're going to be subtracting, as we know. Elif choice is equal to 3, and you obviously know exactly what we're doing here. It's relatively straightforward. It's just a lot of typing, and that is a-okay. We can type. We're big, strong people who know how to use our keyboard. Choice is equal to 5. Then we will be calling circle. Did we call it circle, or did we call it turtle? We called it circle, which is fine. And then finally, elif choice is equal to 6. Then we will be breaking out of the loop and ending the code. So when we have a break, that means that we can break out of the loop that we are in. And I believe we covered this in the very first coding tutorial that we did, what break does, but I'll explain it again here. Break breaks you out of the loop that you are in. So we're going to enter this loop because choice is not equal to 6. And then if choice is equal to 6, then it's just going to break out. And that will work out just fine. So then what happens if they put in something that isn't one of those? Well, obviously they've done something wrong. So let's tell them. Print, you didn't enter in a valid command. And that way they know. And then you can, it'll re-loop and it'll say, you know, which choice do you want this time or something like that. So that's good. Let's flesh out these. So what do we want to say if they choose add? Well, we want to have a x1 and an x2 variable, and we want to say input, what would you like to add? Okay, and then we'll also do another one right here and say what would you like to add to x1? So it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to get two variables from the user, store them as x1 and x2, and then we're going to pass those into our add function as so. And that's really all we need right here. And I'll just kind of space that out so it looks a little bit cleaner. And then we'll just copy and paste this. And this is basically going to be the exact same thing for the rest of these. It's just doing a little bit of copy and pasting and adding in some extra words here. What would you like to subtract? And what would you like to subtract from x1? Perfect. Just like that, except this is actually subtract. There we go. So I'm going to real quick, through the work of editing, get these all to be just like this. And then when we get to the circle, we'll do things a little bit differently. I will be right back. Okay, we've got multiply and divide done. Let's work on circle. So we want the user to input in the number of circles. So we're just going to say input, how many circles would you like to draw? Just like that. And that will work out just fine. They will put in the number of circles that we want to draw. And we should add spaces after these, just because when we type, it'll look a little bit funky to just put it after the question mark. But this is purely cosmetic. It does not matter. You'll be able to input in anything you want there. So how many circles would you like to draw? We will store as n, and then we will call circle with n. That looks pretty good to me. So right now, if we were to run this code, and we can right here, as it's saying that it's expecting crap up here right now. So we can't run this code quite yet. Don't worry too much right now. We'll put in these. If we were to run this right now, it wouldn't do anything, even if it did compile, because we don't do anything up here. It can't add or subtract anything if we haven't told it to do it. Just having the word add isn't going to add those two together. So let's add some stuff up here. But let's also look carefully at what we did down here. So right now, we're getting from the keyboard, from our input, a variable x1 and x2. These are being stored as strings. This is the same thing that happened up here. When we're inputting what would you like to do, this choice is being stored as a string. So we have to typecast these to integers. And in our case, we want to typecast these to floats. Even though we could do integers, what happens if somebody puts in a decimal and they really want to have 0.5 divided by 0.5? If we have these as integers, as we know from the first video, then it's not going to come out with the exact answer that we want. So instead, we're going to put these as floats, and we're going to pass them in as floats, and it'll make it a little bit easier to handle them at the top when we're dealing with numbers, because you can't really add together strings and get the stuff you want. It's like adding together the plus and. It's just not possible. You can't add words together. So we want to make sure that we're dealing with numbers here as so. That works out perfect. And now we can actually do stuff up here. So let's say answer is equal to x1 plus x2. And this is totally valid because these are coming in as numbers. So adding them together, storing them to an answer variable will work out just fine. And then let's say your answer, and then we will have it be the string of answer, because right now this is a float value because we're going to add two floats together. We have to typecast that to a string in order to print it here. If this doesn't make sense, I can try to explain it in more detail in the comments. Just let me know. It's mainly, you just got to make sure that your types are matching when you're doing stuff. You got to be able to print out strings. So we do a string of answer here because we have a string right here to start out. So this is going to be pretty much the same for the rest of these. Answer equals x1 minus x2. And then we'll print your answer is, and then the typecasted string here. So string of answer. Beautiful. Multiply is going to be the exact same. If you're wondering why I'm not speeding through this right now and doing a little time lapse, it's because divide is going to be a little bit more interesting, because there's a really easy error that is quite easy to get that we want to prevent. So what is special about dividing in math? And if you haven't gone into higher level math courses yet, you may not know this. You can't divide by zero. You can't divide stuff between zero things. It's just not possible. And computers recognize that, and they know that dividing by zero is impossible. So we're going to get a big fat old error if we ever try to divide by zero. So when we're passing in x1 and x2, our answer is going to be equal to x1 divided by x2 here. So x2 could be 0, and this would crash our code. So let's make sure that it's not 0. Let's have a little if statement that says if x2 is equal to 0, then print can't divide by 0. And then we're just going to return from this function without getting to the rest of this. And that's pretty important. We don't want to ever divide by 0. It's going to cause a big old error. So if x is 2 is equal to 0, then we're just going to get out of this function and then move on. But otherwise, then we will print out, as usual, our answer here. We can also do this if we didn't want negative numbers. You know, we could do a check of if the number is less than 0, then do a certain thing. You know, that would work out fine, I suppose. But this should work totally fine now. We can check this before we move on to the turtle part of our thing here. So let's just put in a nice little thing here. We'll just say x equals 2 in the circle right now. It's just a placeholder so that we can check if our code works so far. And you should check if your code works as you go here. I'm expecting to maybe see some errors, but here we go. This is a calculator. What would you like to do? I would like to add. Okay, what would you like to add? I would like to add 4 and 12. So that's going to say your answer is 16. It's going to re-loop, and then we're back to the calculator again. So let's divide, and I'd like to divide 12 by 3. It's going to say your answer, 4. So it's working just as we want, but let's just make sure. What would you like to divide? 12. And what would you like to divide from 12? I want to divide 0. It's going to tell us we can't divide by 0, and then it's going to bring us back to the calculator. So that's working exactly as we want it to work, which is awesome. No issues whatsoever is a happy life for me. Let's actually check and make sure. I just ended that by crashing the code myself. If we wanted to just quit, if we put in 6, then it's going to quit our code for us, process finished with an exit code of 0, which means success, and everything is happy as can be. So that's awesome. That's working literally exactly according to plan, which is a good way for us to live. Let's do some funky stuff with Turtle. How does that sound? So I do want to import in random as well, because we are going to be doing some random values with our circles, because we want to place them at random locations all over our turtle screen, because that's just fun and a lot of good times. So we're passing in the number. We want to draw circles, which is pretty straightforward. We're just going to do turtle.circle, and then we have to put the size of the circle inside of here, and this is the radius of the circle if you really want to know what size means. So we need to somehow get the size, and I want to do size equal to a random variable. So we're going to say random.randint, which we did use in the very first video. It's just going to give us a random number here. So random.randint, and we're going to say between 30 and 100. Why not? We can have some pretty big circles here. And then we're going to say, since we want to put it at a random position, we're going to say that our x-coordinate is going to be random.randint, somewhere between -300 and 300. Okay, and then we'll also have our y-coordinate be random.randint of -300 to 300, and that's just going to make sure that it goes somewhere random on our screen. And then we want to enter into a loop here, because we want it to do a certain number of circles. So while num is not equal to 0, because what we're going to do is we're going to subtract num by 1 each time we draw a circle. So it's going to start, say we want 50 circles, it's going to enter in here and say, so num, while num is not equal to 0, so num is equal to 50, it's going to draw a circle, and then we're going to subtract from num, it's going to be 49, we're going to draw another circle, and it's going to continue to do that until it gets down to 0, so we'll know that we are doing exactly 50 circles. So pretty cool. Now, I'm going to show you something, and we're going to run the circle function here, once I put in turtle.setPos, which is going to put us at the position XY. It's an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. I'm going to show you guys what happens when we do this, because it's going to be a little bit funky, and then we'll just make sure we do num equals 1. So we can run this. We do have to do a turtle.done at the very end of this. So one sec, turtle.done, beautiful. And we will do this. It should run totally fine. So what would you like to do? I would like to turtle it up, and I'd like to draw 20 of these. So this is going to launch our turtle display, which you guys cannot see right now. And it also, Okay, I've messed up. Does anybody see what our problem is here? We're getting a random size and random integers, but it's going to use the same one every single time. So it's just going to make the same circle every time. We need to have this code sitting in our while loop, and that will do things significantly nicer for us, I do think. So this will work a little bit better for us. Let's bring back up this, and let's also make sure that our turtle window is at the top here. So what would you like to do? I would like to turtle it up. I'd like to draw 20 circles, and here they go. So what is the problem you see here? Every time it sets the position, it's drawing this real nasty line everywhere. We don't want that. We just want to have little pretty circles everywhere. I mean, maybe you want this because it looks a little bit funky, but this looks disgusting to me. We need to somehow tell the turtle, yo, pick up your pen, dude. You don't want to draw this entire time. You only want to draw when there's circles available. So let's stop this from doing that. And let's fix up our code. There is a very basic turtle command here called turtle.up and turtle.down. So when it goes to the position, we want to make sure the pen is up. And then when it goes down to draw the circle, we want to make sure the pen is down. And now this is going to work exactly according to plan. And just for the sake of speed, let's do the turtle.speed command. Let's make it 0, and let's draw ourselves a bunch of circles. So we're going to run our code here. We're going to come over here. We're going to say, yes, I want to do turtle. I want you to draw 500 circles, okay? And then we're just going to watch them go to town. And this is why turtle.0 does some beautiful speed. These are some nice circles. They're going everywhere. And this is what I consider a very successful, very strange, but very successful calculator. We're doing some real funky stuff. We could also do something that says create squares, and we'll just, have the user input in the number of random squares he wants, and then we just draw the squares with turtle in the same way that we do circle, and get some fun stuff going. Or you could specify the size and have it pass in a variable for size. I finally finished up here. You could do a lot of different stuff. I'm excited to see what you guys do. Be sure to join the Discord and show me some of the code that you guys wrote for your calculators. This is a very basic one. I do recognize that. And we'll be doing some more, probably a more complex one later on. But for right now, very basic calculator, a lot of fun, easy to use, and can do a lot of cool stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back on Tuesday with a new concept, probably recursion, which is all kinds of fun and funky, doing some more stuff with turtle and some weird things. But that's going to do it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next coding tutorial. Bye-bye.